You're listening to the #1 podcast for nonprofit leaders, getting your nonprofit fully funded. This is the Fundraising Masterminds Podcast. We feel like this is why God put us on the earth, but maybe not your team.
A focused leader that will take a hill at all costs, and they are not looking back to see all the bodies that are laying spewed all over the hill at their expense. A lot of our staff are getting salaries that are below market rate, and then even our volunteers, they love our organization, they love what we're doing, and what are we doing? We're killing those people that love us the most.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fundraising Masterminds Podcast. We are so glad that you are here this week. Well, last week we started a new series called the Nonprofit Survival Guide, and if you haven't seen last week's part 1, then definitely go back and watch that first. This week, we are going to be continuing the series by doing part 2. And then next week, we're going to do part 3. And so we're covering 10 traps that development leaders fall into.
Right.
And last week we did 3.
Yep.
This week we're going to do 3 as well. So if you notice, we are in a new location, and that is because we just finished our new course filming on how to grow and cultivate new partners for your organization. And
major partners, Jason, not just
partners.
New partners. Getting the appointment, it's working through the appointment, and what to do after the appointment. Jason, I'm really excited about that, to be honest with you, because I believe the greatest return on investment comes with major partners. It's important that you have the money to be able to survive and get things going, and a lot of times those come from events and things, but boy, you really see tremendous growth through major partner relationships.
Yeah, well, by the time this podcast gets aired, I'm not sure if this course will be done.
I'm confident it'll be released in 2024.
Sometime in 2024.
Right, yeah, that's
sure
what I'm saying. It could be December 31st,
Right.
2024, but I am confident.
And Jim, why don't we get into the 3 traps for this episode? The first trap I have written down here is an over-dependence on a single source of funding.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting because I notice this more with like homeless shelters and like recovery home type places where they tend to get grants from governments.
Yeah, right.
And it's, the government is funding them, and they kind of take this approach of like, well, what do I need to do fundraising for? I get all my money from like 2 grants.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah.
Is there a problem with that?
Yeah. Oh, well, and you'll see that. I mean, it's 60, 70, 80% of their funding comes from one source. Yeah. And
in fact, we just had one person join our Perfect Vision Dinner program because they get all their funding from like 2 grants.
Well, and I think they were worried that they'd be vulnerable with that. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, she was saying that one of her grants might be falling through or may not be renewing. Yeah. And so she's kind of panicking like, oh no, I might actually have to do some fundraising efforts here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You really become very vulnerable because if you lose that, you're in trouble. And I often liken it to a financial portfolio. The last thing you want to do is put all your money into one basket, one sector. You want to diversify your portfolio. The exact same thing happens with your funding sources for your nonprofit organization. You want to have multiple fundraising sources and income sources. One of the things that the percentage that I always use is that you never want any one source being more than 33% of your total budget. So whether it's your vision dinner, or whether it's your major donor effort, or whether it's your direct mail, direct marketing, foundations, wills, trusts, and estates, you never want to have any one of those more than 33%.
We had a guy who just did a Perfect Vision Dinner, went through our program, and he gets a lot of grant money.
Yeah, no, it's dependency on one source. It makes you very, very vulnerable.
Yeah, and it also just, that one source, even if it is like a major donor, right? It can sometimes control the way that you behave, right?
Absolutely.
You might think to yourself, well, I don't want to say this or that because I might ruffle that one person's feathers, and it might not go over too well.
Well, Jason, it definitely gives you missed opportunities for growth, because a lot of times you think, okay, I'm getting all this money from here. I'm not sure if I would need to go over here, or if I want to go over here, try something new. So you sometimes pass on a great opportunity because you've got that on there, but it also gives you complacency in your funding efforts, because you think, well, I've got 80%, I'm fine here, I don't need to try something new. So, missed opportunities and complacency are really big.
If you were trying to raise, I don't know, let's say $50,000 a month for your organization, and you were working really hard, growing really slowly at 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then all of a sudden someone comes around and says, I'm going to write you a check for 20,000 a month.
Right.
And then you're just like, you just went from like 5,000 a month to like 25,000.
Yeah.
You might just say, well, I think my job is done for a while.
Well, and it sounds so good. And to be honest, what I have seen from a lot of our local teams is when someone says to them, I'd like to set an endowment up for you, and that I'll put the amount of money in there and then you live off the interest. Well, what happens is over time, they stop doing the basics of development. They stop doing a dinner. They stop maintaining a relationship because they're getting funding from this source. Well, then all of a sudden, the stock market tanks, and all of a sudden then they're there with no clothes on, and they're wondering, oh no, what do I do next, because they grew dependent on that.
Yeah. So, I think the big obvious takeaway is don't be dependent on one source.
That's right.
Even if it's a great source.
That's
and
right.
you feel very confident about it.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law, right? If it can happen, it will happen.
Right.
Well, the second trap that people get sucked into is neglecting volunteers and staff burnout.
Absolutely.
Right. So, actually, the church that we used to go to in Chicago long time ago, when my wife and I were first married, they went through a booming growth phase.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people volunteering and jumping on. There was a lot of staff coming, and and it was great that it was growing so much.
Right.
But because it was growing so much, we just had this like go, and some of the leaders just didn't appreciate the effort. We didn't like have time to appreciate staff, and so it's just kind of like this go.
Yeah.
And I remember just a lot of people burning out in that season. You know, like people just getting tired or not feeling appreciated, or not everyone has that drive to just work 24/7 a day.
Yeah.
And I think as nonprofit leaders, we can sometimes. We feel like this is why God put us on the earth to do this thing. Right. But we got to remember that maybe God didn't put your team on the earth to do this thing. They may not have the same drive as you do,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Churches are notorious for that. They really are, for trying to get a lot out of a few.
Yeah.
But nonprofit organizations can be the same way. Sometimes you get such a focused leader that will take a hill at all costs, and they are not looking back to see all the bodies that are laying spewed all over the hill at their expense of getting to the top of the hill. And we can burn our staff out. A lot of our staff are getting below market rate prices. We're paying them salaries that are below market rate. And then even our volunteers, they love our organization. They love what we're doing. And what are we doing? We're killing those people that love us the most.
Well, I know that this is a problem. And as we're talking about it, you might be thinking, that might be me. I kind of am a go person, but I've had some issues with my staff. Sometimes the staff or the volunteers will show that they're burning out because they're maybe coming across as not compliant, or arguing with you, or just frazzled, or just, on edge. And sometimes those can be like warning signs that you've like pushed them a little too hard, and they need to be appreciated before they'll come back along. I notice that with my kids a lot, of like everything's great and wonderful, when we go camping or go fishing or whatever, but then you get into that school mode, and I'm pushing hard and they're pushing hard, and then people start to get cranky, and it's not because they don't love you, or it's not because they don't believe in you, but it's just they're just tired or underappreciated. So what are some things that we can do to help if we're stuck in this trap right now?
There's just a lot of different things that we can do. At Crew, we work extra hard on that. We have parties. We have parties often. We recognize. We have a program called Bill Bucks, which someone does something special. You can give those away to people. If you have someone that did something nice for you, you can give it. And then you turn around and you can collect the bill bucks. You can turn those in for prizes. You can actually turn them in for days off. And those bill bucks are just another way of appreciating people. And you can do year-end parties, you can do Christmas, you can do birthdays. Food is a nice gathering kind of a thing. But
Right.
we'll do a lot of games and events and team building and bonding type of things. And we give people outlets. That's probably one of the things we've got on my particular team. We've got a lot of people who love to plan events. And so their joy is helping to plan events. Others' joy is going to those events. So it's kind of a win-win on both ways.
Well, the third trap that people get stuck in as a nonprofit leader is just not having the right development strategy.
Absolutely.
And I know when we were preparing for this episode, we were going back and forth about this, and you had said not having a development strategy at all.
Right.
That's what I said originally, but you were like, well, a lot of people have a development strategy, but they don't have the right development
That's right.
strategy. So what do you mean by that? Because that initially, when I heard that, I was like, that sounds kind of arrogant to think that you know the right thing. But what do you mean by not having the right development strategy?
Well, I can't tell you how many nonprofit organizations I've gone into that are doing a lot of the wrong things in development. So they are really spending a lot of time on things like car washes, candy sales, in elements that have some merit in the fundraising side of things, but do nothing on the friend raising, the relationship building side. So making sure that you have a good balance between the fundraising and friend raising side of things, and making sure that you're winning people to your cause, keeping them through proper cultivation, and lifting them to another higher level of giving.
Right. So when you say a lot of people are doing the wrong kind of development,
Right.
the filter that you're kind of funneling your thought process through is what makes it right or wrong.
Right.
Is the effort winning people to your cause, keeping them and lifting them to higher levels of giving.
That's right.
Right. That process of focusing in on relationship building.
Right.
Right. So if you're saying, well, I'm doing development effort, but
Right.
I'm doing car washes and bake
Right.
sales and
Right.
selling tickets, and well, how is that winning? That might win someone to your cause temporarily,
Yeah.
but is it keeping them over the long run?
Yeah.
Is it
Well-
is it building relationships
Yeah.
with them so that they get lifted and challenged later on?
Well, I'd even argue, Jason, that I'm not even certain if it's winning, because you just because you get money and you get a gift from someone doesn't necessarily mean you win.
Right.
The winning in my mind is that your heart has been captured.
Right,
You
okay.
bought into the mission vision. If someone comes to the door and sells me candy or sells me cookies, that doesn't mean I bought into what they believed in. I
Just-
bought into the product.
You felt sorry.
Just because I like a tag along or
Yeah.
a Thin Mint
Right.
doesn't mean that I bought into the philosophy of that
Yeah.
particular organization.
So when you're talking about development and we're talking about winning people, keeping people, and lifting them to higher levels of giving, we're actually talking about winning their heart over to your mission.
That's right.
And that doesn't always happen through selling cookies
That's
or
right.
doing a bake sale or something
Yeah.
like that, right? You actually have to have some type of effort that it communicates what your mission, vision, and values
That's
are,
right.
and presents it in a way where they actually come on board and
Right.
want to be a
Right.
part of your effort.
Yeah, you're aligning them, Jason, with your mission and goals. I've talked so much about the fact that we need to find that intersection
Right.
between their desires and your mission. And so it's
Right.
that alignment that's that winning side of things that's so important.
So yeah, because a lot of times, and maybe our listeners are thinking this way, but when you say something like you're doing the wrong kind of development or I'm doing the right kind of a development, sometimes
Right.
it can just come across as like, well, I'm the fundraising mastermind, and I know because I have 40 years of experience, and my way is the right way because I know.
Right.
But you're not really saying that. I
No.
think that's important to clarify that what you mean by right or wrong is through this filter of win, keep, and lift.
Well,
right?
it is. And it's effective versus not as effective. So
In terms of building relationships.
yes, there really is a better or best.
Right.
And when people are doing things, that doesn't, if someone's having a car wash, it doesn't mean that they're not bringing in money. They're bringing in money, but you have to say, was that the most effective use? Spending an entire day washing people's cars, bending over and cleaning hubcaps for 8 hours to net $100. Was that the best, most effective way? Did you raise $100? You sure did. Did you raise some money? Yes. But was that the best, most effective way to do that? And that's where somehow it's misconstrued that there's right or wrong. Well, there's really better or best. And 40 years has shown me that there are ways that are much more effective and much better at maximizing.
Well, we're not
those.
just talking about much better, like you're going from $100 to $200. We're talking about going from $100 to like thousands of dollars.
Correct.
Right.
That's right.
Like difference between
that's right.
Almost like earning and working for your money.
That's right.
Versus just being blessed.
That's right.
With this incredible gift.
Right.
Well, this actually is kind of where I wanted to go, because I think it's important. If you've never heard this win, keep, and lift thing, and you're thinking, oh yeah, you've got some good points there. You know, like we do these fundraisers, but we're not really building relationships with people. Well, you really need to check out our mini course called Development Basics. And Development Basics really is where we go over some of the fundamental principles of developing relationships in a nonprofit organization.
It's the foundation,
It's
Jason,
the foundation.
for
I remember
building everything.
When you first started working for Campus Crusade for Christ 40 years ago, you were trained in these development basics.
Right.
And these are principles that never change.
That's
they're,
right.
They're life
That's right.
principles that just stand the test of time.
That's right.
We're not telling you how to do certain things that might change tomorrow.
Yeah, method, technique, strategies.
No, it's not any of
those
that
change.
stuff. These are principles. A lot of them are based on God's word. They stand the test of time. And you really need to have that foundation to be able to even do any development at all.
That's right.
And I know, Jim, you used to actually teach development basics to board members.
Oh, yeah.
Where you would fly out and you would meet with board members. And I remember you would charge several $1,000s to go out and spend a weekend with boards, and you would teach them the founding principles of development.
Right.
And we were able, in our Perfect Vision Dinner course, to record that. And I would say that material is worth thousands of dollars.
It is.
And we now have it available on our website. Just for the people listening to this podcast, we're going to put a coupon code up on the screen. Normally we sell this training on our website for $297.
Which I couldn't believe it. It took me weeks to fall asleep after you made that decision.
Well, Jim, you're probably not going to like what I'm going to say now.
Jason.
I think
don't do it.
I want to give you $200 off.
Jason,
Development Basics. It's just going to be for 30 days, Jim. It'll go back to normal price. But honestly, I really think that this will help people. There's a lot of people out there that have no concept of the development principles. $97 is a steal for Development Basics. Go grab the coupon code. It's on the screen, and go grab it for the next 30 days. Tell your friends, because it's probably not going to be on there very long. And I also would just encourage you to subscribe to this podcast, because every once in a while we release great little things like this, and you just don't want to miss an episode. Well, this wraps up part 2 of our nonprofit survival guide. 3 more traps that nonprofit leaders fall into, which is number 1, do not be dependent on one funding source.
Number
2, do not neglect your volunteers and your staff. And number 3, get a development plan in place, but get it done right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Fundraising Masterminds. We will see you next week.
Take care.